Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1998 drama film Patch Adams. Now, Patch Adams is a film that financially was a pretty big hit when it came out in 1998, but critically, it was a failure. It was a flop with critics. Even the real Patch Adams hated this movie. And to this day, it still gets a lot of hate. There's a lot of vitriol associated with this film when it comes to people's critiques of it. And that's why I had really low expectations for this film going in. And after finally watching it, I can see why people weren't really big fans of this, but I don't understand the overwhelming amount of vitriol. That I don't get. This is honestly a mediocre melodrama. It's another so-so based on a true story Hollywood biopic that's got its cloying moments, that's melodramatic, that's sentimental to the extreme, and is full of cliches. It's not that special to me when it comes to these elements and these things about it that it's completely destroyed for. I really don't think that it's one of the worst films in 1998, let alone one of Robin Williams's worst movies. Is it one of his more disappointing films? Yes. I agree with that because I think there is a potential great movie here, but it never really comes to light. You never see that movie because it's buried under so much Hollywood schmaltz. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on Patch Adams, I would like to give a special shout out to Bronson for requesting this review. And if there is another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. Link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Patch Adams is directed by Tom Shadyac, who prior to this, he did comedies like Liar Liar and The Nutty Professor and Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. So this is definitely not really something that's inside his wheelhouse, but I think he did an all right job. I think he did a pretty solid job directing this, considering he was outside his comfort zone. The opening shot in particular in the snow looks fantastic, and there are multiple other shots in this that are honestly really good. He framed his shots effectively, utilized tracking shots and pans and zooms and other kinds of camera techniques in a pretty strong fashion for the most part. And I know there are certain scenes in this film that are ridiculed, like the butterfly sequence. But say whatever you want about that scene, it's not poorly shot. It's honestly a really nice looking shot. So I think there's quite a few shots in this where Tom Shadyac really shows that he has more range as a director than people give him credit for. That he's not just a silly, zany comedy guy. That he can handle more serious material. And he can direct a drama. And he can do a good job directing those kind of movies. So I don't really agree with the shade that he's gotten over the years for directing this. Is some of his direction sentimental to the max? Yes, but that's what he's asked to do. Directors take what they're given when it comes to the script and the story, and they apply their vision and their skills to those scripts and those stories, and they try to match the tone. They try to match the spirit of the script. And that's what Tom did. So blame the script. Don't blame Tom when it comes to some of the overly sentimental, melodramatic stuff in this movie. Because he didn't write the film. He was just a director. Now, speaking of the script, though, that is easily the worst thing about this movie. The screenplay is by Steve Oderkirk. It's very loosely based on this book by Patch Adams and Maureen Meilander called Gesundheit. Good health is a laughing matter. And by loosely based, I really mean that. I want to emphasize that because there isn't a whole lot about this that is based at all on the actual life of Patch Adams. And that's a shame because the real story of Patch Adams is compelling enough on its own to make a great story and to make a potentially really strong and memorable movie. But you had the wrong guy writing it. This is the same guy who did Kung Pao, Enter the Fist, which I enjoy, but that's not the kind of person that's the right fit for a drama like this. This is the same guy who wrote those awful thumb parody movies, like Bat Thumb. That's that guy. You don't hire that guy to write a script for a serious drama like this. That, yeah, it does have some comedy stuff in it, but that's not really intended to be the main focus of things. It's one of the things that makes Patch stand out because he's willing to joke around and be playful and not necessarily approach medicine and being a physician in the most serious fashion all the time. But because of the way that things are written, Patch comes across like a total clown and not like a professional who just happens to want to buck the system. And it doesn't start off well at all because Patch, he decides to commit himself to a local mental hospital because he's having issues with his mental health and he's suicidal. And in the film, he's an older man when he does this. In reality, he was a young man. But he's an older man because Robin Williams was cast as a lead, and so the script adjusted things in order to make the ages match. And that is automatically a red flag. And it doesn't get better because you have this whole really awkward and unfunny, mean-spirited scene where Patch Adams is making fun of this comatose patient who has his arm raised, and the rest of the group is also poking fun at the guy. And I'm like, what purpose did that serve other than roasting this guy? They just flat out bullied this guy and he couldn't say anything because he's comatose. Like that was really mean spirited and made Patch Adams look like a prick. And because he goes out of his way to help these patients with this one guy who's afraid of squirrels, and he it finds a way to reach him, to get through his delusions and make him laugh and make him feel better and get him to go pee, which the way that it sets things up, that it's this triumphant moment that Patch got this mental patient to pee, complete with the score that's booming in the background and just really trying to make it seem like this epic moment, is laughable, but in the wrong way. Like it almost made it look like it was a parody of a melodramatic biopic. But I don't think it was intended to be a parody. It was intended to be taken seriously. And eventually, Patch decides to go to medical school because he wants to become a doctor so he can help people like he helped that patient. And he goes about his studies by being a bit of a flake, a guy who's just going around cracking jokes, making light of things. And some of the jokes are admittedly funny. The Donner Party joke, there are some bits at the diner that made me laugh, like the bit where he's talking about how the burger will go right to his colon. You know, there are some moments that really make Patch seem like a very charismatic and funny guy, which is the point. And I think the whole conflict with Patch when he's trying to buck the establishment and he's trying to make it more of an acceptable thing for a doctor to be more personable and to have more of a direct connection with his patients and also go way above and beyond when it comes to treating them and looking at death in a different way. I think that is honestly something that actually works fairly well when it comes to this script for the most part. There are some moments where even that is a bit muddled and a bit confused, but most of the time, I think Steve tends to handle that pretty well. Even though it feels very one-sided when it comes to the medical establishment with the people who were in charge being all stuck up and so on and so forth, or having his roommate and colleague uh, call him out one time and just act like an over-the-top jealous doctor who's mad at him because he's getting nearly perfect grades, but he's like having fun and cracking jokes and so on and so forth. And here he is busting his butt and taking it seriously, and he's not doing as well as Patch is. There's just a lot of stuff in this script that feels very fabricated, that doesn't feel very genuine. Either when it comes to different sort of dialogue sequences, moments involving characters, some of the conflict in the story, and the romance in particular, because it's not even based on anything that actually happened in Patch Adams' life. The character of Karen is a fabrication, it's not real. It's a replacement for Patch's actual male friend. They decided to replace the male friend with a female love interest. And it's just as cliched as it sounds. And it plays out exactly the way that a lot of these love interest subplots tend to play out. She's playing hard to get. She doesn't really want anything to do with Patch. She's got her guard up. Eventually, she lets it down. She sees the good side of Patch. Patch brings out the good side in her. But the only difference is there's a pretty sad twist to it all because it's based on the actual story. Because Patch's actual friend got murdered, so because she is essentially a replacement for Patch's real friend, she also gets murdered. But the way that it's all set up, like it doesn't come across as like a genuine shock because it's so fabricated and it's so obviously manipulated and in your face about it. It's just so unsubtle when it comes to just how uncomfortable and how unnerving the scenes are with this sketchy guy who ultimately is the one that kills Karen. So when Karen gets murdered, it's not really a stunning moment. It doesn't make your jaw drop. You're just like, yeah, I honestly had a bad feeling about that guy from the start because the script and the score and just everything about the movie put a giant stamp on his forehead saying that this guy is a killer or this guy is going to hurt somebody because he hurts himself, he's mentally unstable, and yeah, that was not very well done by Odekirk by any means. There's also moments where the stuffy establishment folks actually come across like they're in the right, and Patch looks like he's doing things the wrong way, which is not really, I think, what the writers intended or the writer intended here. And there's just a lot about this script that's just not that engaging or interesting. There's always so much of Patch being a clown for kids or Patch doing these different stuff for these patients that honestly goes that far. Like it's somewhat fun, and it definitely has his heart in the right place. And apparently Robin actually was entertaining real cancer patients, like actual sick kids. I mean, just some of the ways that it's set up by the writer, it does. It still feels manufactured. It still feels fabricated. It doesn't seem real. Like the whole bit with the guy who's like, see beyond the four fingers, or goes in and gives this guy one last safari and has him shoot a bunch of balloons with a rubber band gun. Or the older, well, maybe he's not older, but the guy played by Peter Coyote, who I believe this guy's name is Bill. So yeah, Bill, he's honestly a jerk to the medical staff, to the nurses, to everybody he meets, and he is eventually no longer a dick because Pat shows up and starts, I guess, connecting with him by talking about different ways to describe death. And I'm like, that's what got through to him? I don't really get that. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. And then you have the whole bit where he's dying and then he doesn't want to spend his last moments with his family. He wants to spend his last moments with Patch. I don't buy that either. Or the older late gal who won't eat. And so Mitch Philip Seymour Hoffman's character is begging Patch to help him. And this lady, she has this fantasy of bathing in a pool of noodles. And then there's this whole scene, predictably, where she gets to bathe in noodles, and it's supposed to be this big, heartfelt moment. And I'm like, this is just silly and honestly kind of dumb. And so there's a lot of that where a lot of the stuff with Patch trying to cheer up the patients is just kind of silly and kind of dumb most of the time, and not really that clever and not really that funny. Like, I can get it when it comes to making the kids laugh, but the way that he's supposed to make the adults laugh, like, I kind of don't buy it. It doesn't really seem like what he's doing is that funny most of the time, except when he's riffing with his colleagues. And then you have the whole free clinic thing, and that's a nice gesture by Patch to go out of his way and risk his uh, uh, potential a place as a doctor by helping people who are in need. But you even have some stuff associated with that that's clunky, like the whole thing that happens when they have to steal supplies and sneak into the hospital, and they never get caught. They never really get in trouble for doing that. And you never really see anything other than that one scene when it comes to them needing supplies. They just steal the supplies one time, and then that's kind of it. You don't even see them using the supplies that they stole either to help other people. And then you have the whole thing with Karen, and there is some attempts to add some layers to her character, which I did appreciate, even though this is a fake character that was never really a part of Patch's life. But it's nice to see somebody get some depth when you find out why she's so guarded against men, because of the fact that she was abused by men throughout her life. But you don't really go that far with it, because once she finally lets her guard down and starts falling for Patch, she eventually gets fridged and gets murdered. And just the way that whole scene is set up, when she answers the call for help by this guy who she even had a bad vibe with initially, but then trusts him enough to go in and try to help him at his own house. Like, I thought she was just gonna give him a call back, like, not find his address and go to his house. She was asking for trouble there. And then you have the whole bit where Patch later, he feels bad because he feels like he is the reason why she died, because he made it seem like, oh, everybody could be trusted, even these total strangers. But I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, the way that things were set up, it made Karen seem kind of dumb and foolish in her own right in terms of her actions. So it doesn't even really necessarily feel like something where it was entirely his fault in the first place. Then you have this confrontation between Patch and his friend and colleague and Truman. And Truman's trying to make him feel guilty for giving up on the free clinic and giving up on being a doctor because of what happened, and calling him selfish. And that seems out of character for that particular guy, for his friend. Seems forced, like so many other things in this script. And then Patch says a line that makes no sense. Humans are the only species that kill each other. I'm like, no, that's not true. There are plenty of insect species that eat their own kind. There are plenty of other species throughout the earth that kill each other. Humans are not the only ones to do that. Maybe you're talking about murder, but even then, like, that, humans aren't the only one to do that either. So I don't really understand. I don't understand that dialogue. That seemed like another forced thing that was thrown in there by Odekirk to try to make some sort of commentary about society, but it backfired because it didn't sound like it was based in reality, and it made Patch look like an idiot. And then Patch quickly gets over his crisis when he sees a butterfly, because he's actually considering suicide again after the funeral of Karen. And then he sees a butterfly, which is a reference to this exchange that he had with Karen earlier, where she talked about how she wishes she could have been like a caterpillar and then like a butterfly because of everything that she's been through. And I have to admit that is very on the nose and over the top that the butterfly is there and inspires him to go back and decide to become a doctor and not give up on the dream of the free hospital. And I'm like, yeah, I could see why critics looked at that and called bullshit on it, because even I'm doing that. And then you just continue the drama with Patch and the dean of the hospital, Dean Walcott, who has this bug up his ass about Patch. He's going above and beyond and then some, trying to expel him. Patch eventually gets help from his friends and his colleagues, including Mitch, who seemed like a guy who hated Patch, but now is on Patch's side. It doesn't make any sense. And Patch is fighting this expulsion, and it sets up this climactic uh, um, court hearing at the medical court, where a bunch of doctors will review the evidence and then determine whether or not Patch should continue on with his studies. And Patch has this long and passionate speech that, on paper, is not too bad, but it goes on a little too long and it lays things on a little too thick. And it's another thing that just sounds like it isn't really anything that somebody would actually have said in that context or in that particular moment. Predictably, you have the sick kids come in and they're wearing clown noses in the courtroom. You're having the whole bit where the people who are judging Patch, it seems like they're saying that they're going to side with the dean, but then they say something completely different, and then applaud Patch for his ways of trying to buck the status quo, and they hope that his sensibilities will catch like wildfire throughout the medical community, and then he graduates, but he's still got to poke fun at it because then he wears a gown without a back, so he's showing his ass to everybody as he's graduating and getting his graduation diploma. And like that's another instance where I'm just like, that's a forced bit of comedy. And it's honestly, it's kind of a fitting way to end this movie because it made Patch Adams look like an ass a good chunk of the time. So now you actually see his ass as one of the last images uh, of this movie and of this story. I do agree with critics who say that Patch Adams is written in a way where he's too immature and honestly one dimensional. This is a very intelligent man. Like, if you actually look up the real Patch Adams, he was incredibly intelligent. He is, I mean, I think he's still around. If not, I'm not entirely sure, but he was definitely a guy who knew what he was doing. He wasn't a total clown who was just an entertainer for sick people. He actually was somebody who took his work as a physician seriously. He took his studies seriously. He actually did study. You never see Patch study. You just see him be some kind of savant and just luck his way or just find a way to pass all these classes and get these high grades because he's just smarter than he looks. So that's only telling half the story of Patch Adams. And it's too bad because I do feel that the story of Patch Adams with a better script could have been something special because it is something different and unique when it comes to a story about a doctor. There is something still very intriguing and very relatable about somebody trying to do things for other people, to make people laugh, or to try to go out of their way to treat patients or showcase the best sides of human nature. And I think there is something to be said about really connecting with sick people and patients on a deeper level and not being so distant from them. But the way that the script goes about it, it's so distant from reality that it's honestly at points shocking. So, yeah, not a very good script. It has its moments. I think its strengths and the moments where it actually does get things right are mostly overlooked by critics and aren't given enough credit. But I do admit that this is, at the end of the day, not a very good screenplay because of the over the top sentimentality, the fabricated nature of things, the predictability of it, the cliches, and just how it just really feels like nothing but a bunch of Hollywood bullshit. Now, the cast, this, in my opinion, is another part of the film that isn't too bad. I mean, they're working with a pretty weak script, so there's only so much they can do with it. Robin Williams is Patch Adams. I think for a biopic based on Patch, I don't really feel he was the right casting choice. And it's not because Robin Williams is a bad actor. No, he's an amazing actor. He was an amazing person and incredibly talented in more ways than one. But because Patch was a younger man when he went into medical school, it should have been a younger actor. That's just how I feel about it. I don't know exactly who I would have cast in that role, but it wouldn't have been Robin Williams because it seemed like Robin only got this because he turned down Liar Liar and he felt bad and he wanted to be in Tom Shadyac's next movie, and it happened to be Patch Adams. So it wasn't like he was cast because he was the best out of all of the actors who auditioned. It wasn't like he was cast because he was the best fit. He was cast because had a connection with Tom Shadyac. That's really the main reason why he was cast. And because he was a big star and he was a big name. And he was probably a big reason why the film was successful financially. But despite the fact that I don't think he was necessarily the best person for this role, it's not a bad performance by Robin. He's decent in this. I think there's moments when he shines, when he's riffing and doing the comedy. There's also some dramatic moments that definitely carry some weight and work because of Robin's talents. There are some moments though where Robin is laying it on too thick when it comes to some of the drama stuff with like his facial expressions and some of the way that he's saying his lines that just make it look like he's acting and not really just fully embracing the role and becoming the character. It looks like it's Robin Williams being Robin Williams and just saying this speech and not really Patch Adams. So I think that is definitely something that I did notice on more than one occasion, especially during the final court scene. When he's going up against the board and there's this whole thing going on and he has that speech. Like that really was a moment where I felt Robin didn't really deliver the most authentic performance. There were some moments during that speech that were really good, and I like some of the things that he said, but there were other moments where it was off. And I think honestly, I think a lot of it really has to do with the fact that I think it seems like Robin himself, even at one point, started to really lose faith in this film. And he was just like, I'm just gonna do the best I can and be done with this. And then move on to my next project. Monica Potter, she does her best Julia Roberts impression in this and is okay. But I didn't really think she was that impressive. But she was adequate. Daniel London is Truman Schiff. The characters, there's really not much to him. He's just this nerdy friend of Patches. Philip Seymour Hoffman is Mitch. I like him. This is not one of his best performances. There were some points where his performance is even honestly a little over the top. Bob Gunton is Dean Walcott. Another pretty over the top performance. The guy is just a dick. He's just a stereotypical dickhead for the entire movie. He plays that role well, so I'll give him credit for that. And you got like Irma P. Hull as Joletta, Peter Coyote is Bill, Michael Jeter is Rudy, a few other people, a few other actors and actresses, like Harold Gould is Arthur Mendelsohn, and they're okay, they're fine for what they're asked to do. But it's a film that definitely features mostly Robin Williams and Monica Potter, and Robin does the best he can to carry the film, but because of how weak the script is, he can't carry it that far. And neither can anyone else in the cast. The cinematography by Fade and Papa Michael Jr. at points is honestly great. Looks really good. At other points, it's eh. So it's kind of a mixed bag at points. The editing by Don Zimmerman. I think there are moments where the editing really works. There are other moments where it doesn't click. The music by Mark Shaman. I think it was nominated for an Oscar. I think. This score I didn't care for. It was another aspect of the film that was just overly sentimental and over the top. This sounded like a score that was created by ChatGPT in the future for dramatic melodrama. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like the most cliched melodramatic score imaginable. it's not that well paced of a movie either. Like after a certain point, I was just really bored by the movie because I saw where it was going, I saw the beats, and I just lost interest in it. And I was really only continuing to soldier on through the film because of Robin Williams and because of uh, Tom Shadyac and his direction. But yeah, I'm not really particularly that fond of Patch Adams. It's a very patchy film. No pun intended. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.